Hi, I'm Teryl with Teryl Loy Enterprises, and I want to show you some more uses of our circle templates. This entire sampler behind me was made with all inside circles, very quickly I might add. Right now I'm just going to focus on the clamshells. They are so simple and so much fun to do. Okay, let's make some clamshells. So I wanted to show you how to make clamshells in an irregular space, not necessarily just a block. So I took this 12-inch block and I put a diagonal right through it. I have the 2.5-inch circle. I wanted to pick a fairly large one so you didn't have to watch me too long fill this space. I do need some skateboard grid tape on it. I'm just going to pull some off of this other circle real quick. These are the best little things. They're so usable and they leave no residue as I peel them off. Sharp fingernail helps, so. Oops, I just split that one. Okay, that should be enough. So I'm going to start in the corner and we're going to clamshell this space. So I'm going to pull my bobbin up. By the way, I do have my ruler foot on right now, so I could be using a 1/4-inch template, but I'm going to go ahead and opt to use the 3/8 and put it on. And I use these etch lines and I line up on the bottom of the area, the seam or the edge of the quilt, wherever you're putting it. So basically what you do when you have an irregular space like this, I'm assuming this little diagonal line here would be a seam or a ditch. I'm going to stitch in the ditch until I hit the template instead of doing the whole clamshell. So anytime I don't want to stitch out here, just stitch in the ditch. That's really the only trick you need to know. Whoops. I'm trying to do this one-handed without my other handlebar down. That's okay, we're close enough. Okay, so here I am up on the edge and off I run. So now to do the clamshells, I just slide her down and I'm good to go, lining up that base each time. And this is why it is so simple. I have tried buying those longer clamshell tools where you get multiple clamshells at one time. I have trouble holding them and keeping them even. I can do this very quickly and I don't struggle holding this at all. Okay, here I probably won't finish the whole thing. So the same thing applies. When I hit the ditch, just stay in the ditch. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. So now I'm ready to do the second row of clamshells. Well, so since I didn't get the full clamshell quite in there, where do I start the next one? So it isn't that hard to figure out. First off, you're going to put this etch line right here on top of the peak of the previous clamshell, line them up even. If you had gotten the entire clamshell in, you would put this etch, the vertical etch line up here even with your ditch, but I didn't quite get her in. So I know technically I need to bring her over a little bit. Where I'm really targeting is the center. I'm estimating where the top of the hump is here, and I'm trying to keep the template about a 1/4 inch away. So again, I'm going to stitch up the ditch. Better this time. Okay, and there I am, and off I go. So I'm estimating that I'm going to hit the top of that hump. Now, I may be, a 16th or 32nd off the top of the hump. It does not matter. If it really bothers you or you get off a lot, maybe you slip the ruler, just start improvising and nudge your template a little bit as you go. But I guarantee you no one's going to see this. I have experienced, I took a class where we marked our clamshells with pounce pads and big stencils, and I tell you, those were very off. This is turning out, for me anyway, to be a far more accurate way to do it. Now I do want to pause here for a second. I'm assuming that's the top of the hump. But remember, if it wasn't, because you had an interference, you're going to have to estimate it or just come back to this side. Make sure this etch line's lined up with those previous humps. And off you go to the last one. So let's do that again. So I'm going to go up the ditch. How far do I go? Well, we got an extra hint here. You want this edge line approximately over that center line. See that right there? But again, I'm doing the same thing we did before. I want this being on the top of this hump about a 1/4 inch away. So as I go up the ditch, I can reposition this a little better. I'll get it away from there. So see that? Which, okay, now I'm about a 1/4 inch away from the top, but I'm also, this edge line is now closer in alignment with that V. If I sneak over there and look. So again, I'm going to one-handed lay here, go up this ditch, all the way now till I hit the template, because I like where she is. That makes sense? I got that lined up with that, and I got these guys lined up with the top of the hump. Okay, off we go. Okay, now that one, it looks like to me I did miss a little bit. So what am I going to do on this one? I'm going to drop my template a hair to pull her back a little bit. I'm just going to start easing her back a little bit. So I start to get her back to the center of the hump. I think I'm happy now. Just a little improvised, nobody's ever going to see it. And then I got to get these guys. So you got the idea. Okay, so where do I go for the next one? I'm going to stitch up my ditch. Again, I have this on the center of the hump with it about a 1/4 away from the peak. So if I just estimated a 1/4 is about right there. Does that look like about a 1/4 inch in between? We'll try it. So that would mean I like where this template's right now. Go up, come back. So what happens when you fill this whole thing? Nobody sees slight variances or deviations. They just see texture. We're creating texture now. So off you go to the last one. So again, I got to watch this side because over here it's kind of confusing where the peak is. It's probably about there. Okay. So as you can see, I would just continue this process going up. So it is truly possible to put clamshells in irregular spaces. They don't always have to come out exactly even every time. So to fill in a clamshell in this space, I would go ahead and chalk in a horizontal line in a vertical line right at the point. That will make this much simpler to get started. So in this case, now I would line my edge lines on the horizontal line and this edge line on the vertical line up here. But I would first need to tie off or pull up my bobbin threads. I'd probably do that a couple stitches away from the corner there. I'm going to do a couple lock-in stitches right there. And get that thread out of there. Okay, so I have these lined up, and I have this one lined up. And now we're ready to go. Now, I'm going to draw on here just so we can all see what's happening together. So then you say, well, how do I do the next one? Well, if this one was finished, it would have landed about there, correct? And this one probably would have landed there. Well, let's use those as reference points then for the next one. So we know the next one, this point, the vertical line should be about over the point where that one ended. And we know this line should be on the peak, the top of the last clamshell. That gives us a reference point of where to put the template for the next one. So let's just review that again. I got the vertical line over where it would have ended had I done an entire clamshell. Okay, and I have this edge line right on top. So that means I'm going to go up this ditch until I hit the template now. Now that I know where she needs to be positioned. And I'm going to do the next one. And you can laugh at me now. I have my template upside down. Why I noticed is because, see my chamfered edge? I don't always need it, but when I run a tool back against the back edge, it's really nice to have the chamfer up to take away the little bit of vibration I feel when the top of the hop-on foot hits the template. Okay, so now we're ready for the next one. It's a little bit easier. Actually, I should have just slid this over, but it's the same theory. Make sure this edge line is lined up on the top of your previous hump. Okay, so for the third row, how do we know where to go? We do the same process. Put these horizontal lines lined up even with the top of the clamshells. And since we can't use this one this time, we have nothing to line the vertical one up with, we go back to that earlier technique where we estimate a 1/4 inch away from the peak of the hump. So if you consider this about the peak, the highest point, I need this a 1/4 inch away for the hop-on foot. So about here. So that means I stitch up the ditch now to where I hit the template. One hand stitching in the ditch. It doesn't work very well. There we go. I'm off a little bit, but that's good enough. And then I do my next one. Slide over and do the last one. And as I slide, as long as I have this still lined up with the top of the previous clamshells, I'm okay. Okay, and you would repeat the process. So I hope that helps you get started with your clamshells. I might add, I get so many requests or questions about which size template, which size circle do I buy? And that is a hard question. It depends how big your space is and how big you want your clamshells. So I actually did group the clamshells, or all the circles now in a set, and I do sell them as a set now at a very discounted price for you. So have fun with the circles and especially the clamshells. Thank you.